As you can tell from the title, we finally did it. We took our GT4 RS into the 216s at COTA. The best part about it all is that I had been cooking up a recipe on how to make this car quicker, but for this event, I just left it alone and we got what we wanted. Join me in our unexpected venture into the 16s in our OEM Plus GT4 RS. Let's take a trip to the past. Before the arrival of our orange GT4 RS, I spent almost 3 years tracking a 2016 GT4. 2017 is when my cult-type following for this platform started. We only dreamed of a time where Porsche would put an engine with more power in a mid-engine chassis. We were sure this would never happen, as this would compete with Porsche's premium offering, the 911. A handful of years passed, and through a friend, we received an allocation for an orange GT4 RS out of California. It was all I ever dreamed of, and the first of its kind, as Porsche had not produced this variant before. This car is essentially a GT4 with a redesigned GT3 powertrain that revs to 9,000. Even before the car arrived, we had a slew of parts waiting for it. We knew this car would take a similar recipe than the 981 to become adjustable, so we took what we learned from our previous GT4 and applied it to this car. We sprinkled some parts that were new to the market and we were off to the races. I was of the mentality that we keep the car as stock as possible to showcase how capable this car would be. We knew this car would be fast on track, but had no idea where it would stand amongst its GT brothers. Our first glimmer of how performance-oriented this car was when we took the car to Harris Hill and Eagles Canyon Raceway. Both of these tracks were smaller and technical, but we were anxious to take the car with a little more tire than stock to a track where this car could stretch its legs. Next was COTA in December of 2023. We arrived to the track with OEM wheels and Nankang CRS V2 200 treadwear tires. The reason for this is that I am of the belief that to properly read a car and feel its characteristics, both good and bad, the car must be driven on street rubber. I'm not going to deny that I was eager to put sticky rubber on it, but doing so would mask proper communication to the driver. That weekend was all about absorbing what the car had to say, and I was stoked when I saw a 220.4 on the board. You could see I was struggling with the front end on the high-speed sections, and for those of you who aren't familiar with COTA, going sub 220 is everyone's goal. The fact that I was able to get close in a car I had simply put better rubber than OEM was pretty amazing. Our next goal was clearly going sub 220 on the same rubber. After the December event, I had the car up on the rack for a post-track inspection, and I softened the front sway bar to try to get more grip out of the front axle. The next track event we would attend with the car was in April of 2024. As soon as I got the car on track, I noticed the front end felt a little bit better, but the rear of the car was starting to feel light through the high-speed sections. Now, with every car I drive at COTA, I always plan on running as little wing as possible, as I really hate to carry that extra drag if I don't have to. It was day 2 on track and I was able to piece a decent lap. I was focused on making every apex, and a 2:19.65 came up on my lap timer. Again, I was freaking pumped. I was now sub 20 in this Holy Grail Cayman on street rubber. We continued driving the car that weekend, and everyone who did some laps in it shared how incredible of a machine the car was. Every experience had words like visceral, raw, and amazing in it. May came around, and again we took the car with the exact same rubber to the track, as those Nankang tires were pending coming back into stock. This was a big mistake. At this event, I actually regressed, and my best lap time was only a 2:21.72. The tires were now on very low tread depth, and it was like they never switched on again. I was now to live with this for the next few months, because here in Texas, we shut off all track activity in late June through August because of the heat. Honestly, it was time to level up. There was only one clear goal in mind from here. Let's bury this car into the teens at COTA. We knew sticky rubber would gain us a few seconds, but as an enthusiast, we still need to do our job and piece the lap together. A lot of close friends stated I would be in the low 17s in no time, but I was not so positive about that. Most shockingly to me was how easily it rolled off their tongue. People in modified cars struggle to go sub 20, and we were already there on good grooved rubber. In my mind was the simple fact that we run at HPDEs, not private rentals. The simple reality is that you could be on a flyer, and if someone decides to not give you a point buy, then you have to wait and go again. From there, you have to keep the right mentality, focus on getting the tires back to their happy place, and piece it all together. We got with our local wheel company, 812, and had them cut us a set of 19-inch wheels. Most said it was impossible, but we were off to the track again in September 2024 and on Hankook F200 rubber. At this point in time, we weren't even close to boost weather, but the track felt amazing and had a lot of rubber laid down. Day one was all about learning how the car handled with the new size rubber. Session one, I was already into the 17s. To me, it was simply insane that we skipped right over the 18s and went straight into the 17s. I wanted to see incremental gains, but was not going to complain about being faster off the bat. To state the obvious was that in that first session, the tires were at their prime and overall grip would start becoming less the more we drove the car. Day two came and my goal was to compensate for the life we took out of the tires the first day with all I learned about the car from driving it. Sun was out, and after 2 laps of warm-up, I put down a 2:17.04. I did not know if to be excited or hurt. There's nothing worse than going a 0.0 at the track. The next number down is so close, but the track is only getting warmer and going any faster is almost impossible. This was my best lap of the weekend, and this is where my dream of going a 2:16 started. It was now my new goal with the car. As you could tell, it took a lot of bandwidth to get the car to a 2:17 because the car was still unhappy in a lot of places. Add to that how eager I am to roll throttle sometimes, and it's a recipe for losing lap time. Next, I headed out solo to ECR with this car in November of 2024 to get some seat time, and man, did that just confuse me on how I felt about the car. The track was especially slick that weekend, and I was struggling to get the car turned. From previous times we attended ECR, we did learn that a balanced car at COTA usually understeers at ECR, but this was on another level. I didn't want to make changes to the car as they would be track specific, and I was chasing a number at COTA. One thing I did learn from this weekend was that the car still had a slight bit of understeer, more than I wanted. It was time to put the car on the nose. And also that I wanted the car to feel more stable in the high-speed S's, so I decided to max out the rear wing. For our next event in December, we opted for new Hankooks, a strut bar from Emotion Engineering, and a DSC box that my friend rolled into the paddock with. Turns out the 4RS he had just purchased already had one in it, and he now had a spare. I threw the DSC box in the car with a base 4RS file in it. I also made some tweaks when I had the car on the rack pre-event. I raised the rear of the car by 6 millimeters and took the wing from 3/4 to full downforce. To be clear, the front aero piece of the car was always set to max. With this, the car should now drive off the nose, and that was something I was getting comfortable with from karting with my friend TJ. Earlier this week, before this event, there had been a ton of rain, and from my drag racing days, I have learned that when it rains, it peels or bubbles the rubber off the track. Day one was mostly a wash, but driving this car and the 911s in the rain on street tires was so much fun. It seemed that this event would be one to enjoy company and have fun, not so much for setting fast laps. There was an opening in the sky, afternoon on Sunday, and it was time to maybe go for a fast lap. I was on radio with David and mentioned to him that while it was starting to dry on the front straight, it could still be pretty wet on the far side of the track. That was exactly the case. I prepped for my fast lap in mixed conditions and was able to piece a 2:18.32. Data shows I could have been in the 17s, but I was miles from a 2:16. The next event on the radar is Chin February 2025, and we are only a few days out. I look over the brakes, nut and bolt the car, and realize we have a few problems. The right front camber plate has a ton of play in the bushing, and the left rear has come loose half a turn. I had never seen this happen to a front camber plate and also never experienced a problem in the rear. I tightened the rear plate and we were good there, but what should I do about the front? If I replace it, the car needs an alignment and I did not have time for that. I dug through my spare parts bin and found an identical camber plate. I decided to mark everything up and installed the replacement part in the exact same spot the old one was installed. After I was done, I hopped in the car for a quick street drive. The steering wheel was a bit canted, but the car had no pull to either side. We're gonna send it. You had no idea, Jorge. Everyone driving had no idea. Since I would also be on the same tires as December, my only goal was to get through the weekend and just have some fun. Once this event was over, I would order new parts and realign the car. Besides that, COTA had laid new asphalt earlier in the week, so I was of the opinion that grip would not be good for the entirety of the event. I go out on session 1 and after some warm-up laps, I begin pushing the car. And when I mean pushing, I was going hard. It really was my first time feeling the car in decent asphalt with the new changes. The car still had some push in it, but sometimes rotated beautifully through the high-speed sections. Yes, those two things go against each other, but this car seems to change attitude as the weather changes. That may be why I like Hispanic women. Anyways, multiple times I went through the S's full sideways and had big moments on corner out. I was now so comfortable sliding the car that it was costing me lap time. I tried slowing down my inputs the next few sessions, but still, the car was super lively. Sunday comes around and I lose both morning sessions doing some right seating with friends, but people keep saying the track feels amazing. It is past noon now, but the weather is still chilly. David and I decide let's go early and try to line up at the front. With my tire pressures set around 24 PSI, my plan was to do an out lap, warm-up lap, and a full sand lap, hoping that in my full sand lap, the tires would have come to their optimal tire pressures of 29 PSI. I am released onto the track and start my warm-up lap. On my out lap, I push pretty hard and let the grip come to me as the lap progresses, all while avoiding curbing to keep the sidewalls happy. We roll through the start finish and hit some traffic, but I'm still hopeful I can get by before the end of the next lap. It looks like cleaner, so let's send a lap. From the lap, you can tell the car still has a mix of understeer and oversteer, but it's nonetheless quick. When I arrived to turn 12, there was a yellow flag and that clearly threw me off. But the Delta still looked good on the way out, so I continued to push. My mind was still at turn 12, so 13 was not ideal, but I killed turn 15. I was a little too early into 19 and knew that the way out would not be easy. Small correction to keep the slide, and next thing I am thinking of is roll speed into 20. I used all my patience on the way out to avoid wheel spin, and the Delta kept getting more negative. Would this be a 216? I thought so. We put up a freaking 216.95 on the board. Not only are we the only 4RS in the 16s, but we are mostly stock. This is a pretty insane achievement for any car, let alone one with very little mods. Crazy that we arrived to this weekend with not even the slightest intention of getting a PB, and we were in the 16s. I want to have a moment of transparency with you all. Before this event, my plan was to install a lightweight battery, gut the car, put some small aero bits on the car, and tune the DSC box. But I simply ran out of time. Like they say, everything happens for a reason, and man, am I happy to have pulled this off the way I did. As I'm climbing out of the car, I grab the USB drive to not only confirm it's a clean lap, but also to compare it to my 217.0 from 5 months ago. Initial biggest loss to my 17 lap was in turn 6. Man, was I struggling for front end there. From the data, you can also see how 12 cost me all the way through 15, but there was a bit of back and forth between the laps elsewhere. All I can say from comparing is that if I would have spun the tires a little bit on exit at 20, that would have been it. Lap thrown away. The car has done all I ever wanted from it and more. What a freaking machine this GT4 RS is. I'm not gonna lie, it crossed my mind many times to throw big aero, power, and suspension at it, but you all kept me sane and in the right path. That is, squeezing all we could from the car as stock as possible. Now that we achieved what we wanted, we won't be retiring the car from tracking, but yes, from chasing max lap time. I have a plan for the car where you all will continue to see it, but in a slightly different scenario. So there is a lot more orange car content to come. Thank you for watching, and if you aren't already, make sure to subscribe to the channel and click that notification bell. Also, if you have a suggestion on what to do with the car in its next phase or a video you want to see, leave it on the comments below. That's it for me today. See y'all at the track.